He promised forever, but that promise ended in a scream that still haunts the night. Now enjoy this story. The story begins on a quiet evening in Nigeria, when the air was heavy with secrets no one dared to speak out loud. The town looked calm, but behind that calmness lived whispers of jealousy, betrayal, and dangerous love. People often said love could be sweet like honey, but they also warned it could burn hotter than fire. Her name was Amora, a young woman whose laughter could soften even the hardest hearts. She had a way of making everyone feel seen, and it wasn't long before men in the neighborhood noticed her. But it was Chike, a handsome and confident man, who captured her attention. He spoke with charm, his promises sounding like melodies. He told her she was the only one who could make him feel alive. Amora believed him, because everything about the way he looked at her made her think it was true. Their love grew quickly. Neighbors often spotted them walking together, sharing roasted corn from roadside sellers, or sitting close, lost in each other's company. Amora's friends warned her not to trust too easily, but she only smiled. She believed she had found the one. Chike was different, she said. He had plans for them, big plans, and he wanted her to be part of it. What Amora didn't know was that behind Chike's sweet words lived a darker side, one he kept hidden from her. When he smiled, it was bright, but when he was alone, his eyes carried a storm. He was a man fighting demons, demons that whispered to him in the dead of night. One evening, Amora returned home from the market with her basket half full, her mind replaying the way Chike had hugged her that morning, whispering that he couldn't wait to see her again. She didn't notice the older women staring at her with uneasy looks, as though they carried news too heavy to share. Something about the way they murmured under their breath would have made anyone else pause, but Amora was too wrapped in the thought of love. When Chike came to her that night, he was different. His voice was lower, his words sharper, though he masked them with a smile. He asked questions that made her uncomfortable, about loyalty, about promises, about whether she would still love him if he had nothing. She laughed, telling him love was enough. But Chike didn't laugh back. His face froze, his hands tightening as though he was holding on to something he couldn't let go. That night, as the moon hung high, Amora's heart raced with both love and unease. She told herself it was nothing, that Chike had simply been tired. But the way he left her house without saying goodnight stayed with her. She lay awake, staring into the darkness, wondering why her chest felt heavy, as if a shadow had entered her home. In the following days, Chike grew more unpredictable. Sometimes he was sweet, bringing her small gifts, holding her hands like he never wanted to let go. Other times, his eyes would darken, his voice cutting, leaving Amora silent and confused. She wanted to ask questions, but something inside her told her not to push too hard. She thought love meant patience. She thought she could wait for him to come around. But the people around them began to notice. Amora's best friend, Ngozi, pulled her aside one afternoon and whispered that Chike was not who he seemed. She had seen him in places no one expected him to be, heard rumors that chilled her bones. Amora brushed it off, though a part of her heart began to tremble. She wanted to believe love was stronger than doubt. One late afternoon, Amora and Chike sat by the river, the water glimmering in the fading light. He held her hand, his grip tighter than usual. His voice was soft, almost too soft, as he asked her if she trusted him with her life. She smiled nervously, not sure what answer would satisfy him. She said yes, because she believed it was what he wanted to hear. Chike leaned close, kissed her forehead, and whispered words she couldn't quite understand. It was in that moment that something inside Amora shifted. For the first time, she felt fear standing next to the man she loved. The fear was quiet, but it stayed, like a shadow refusing to leave. She told herself again that it was only in her head, but deep down, she knew love should never feel this heavy. And yet, she stayed. Because love, for her, had always meant holding on. What she didn't know was that Chike's idea of love was nothing like hers. His love was not about holding on, it was about control. His love was not about giving, it was about taking. And the closer he drew her in, the darker the path ahead became. That path was leading to a night no one in the town would ever forget. A night where whispers would turn into screams, and where love would reveal its most dangerous face. Amora's story deepened in ways she never imagined, and the sweetness she once held onto began to show cracks only she could feel but was too afraid to admit. The morning after that uneasy evening by the river, she woke with her mind full of questions. She stood in front of her small mirror, brushing her hair slowly, replaying every word Chike had said. Did he mean what he whispered, or had she misheard him? The thought pressed against her chest like a stone. But when she remembered the way he kissed her forehead, her heart softened again. She told herself she was overthinking, that all relationships had their moments of doubt. The days rolled by, and Chike was everywhere. His shadow followed her. He appeared outside her home before dawn, waiting. He walked with her to the market, holding her hand firmly, as though she belonged to him alone. At first, it felt flattering, but soon she began to notice that he never gave her space. If she stopped to greet anyone, he would cut the moment short, pulling her along with a cold look that froze her smile. Her friends started noticing the change. Ngozi, her childhood friend, became restless. One day, as they sat weaving hair together on a wooden bench outside Amora's house, Ngozi leaned closer and whispered, "This isn't love anymore. Can't you see it? His eyes, they scare me." Amora forced a laugh, brushing it away. She didn't want to believe her friend. How could she admit that her once sweet love now had edges sharp enough to wound? She kept telling herself Chike only acted that way because he loved her too much, because he couldn't bear to lose her. She didn't realize that love mixed with obsession could be dangerous. The unease grew deeper when she began hearing rumors. At the market, women exchanged looks when she walked past. One muttered about a fight Chike had been in at a bar, another about a girl who once disappeared after being seen with him. Amora tried to block the words, but they clung to her like shadows. She wanted to confront him, but fear silenced her. Whenever she thought of questioning him, she remembered how quickly his temper could change. One evening, the sky was heavy with dark clouds, and thunder rumbled far away. Chike arrived at her home, drenched from the rain, his eyes wild, his shirt clinging to his skin. He didn't wait for an invitation, he walked straight in, pacing the room. Amora's hands trembled as she watched him. He asked her strange questions again, questions about whether she would run if he ever made a mistake, questions about what she would sacrifice for love. His words spilled like riddles, and his voice carried a weight that made her stomach twist. She tried to calm him, telling him that nothing could break them apart, but he only stared at her, long and hard, before walking out into the storm without a word. She stood frozen at the door, the sound of rain swallowing her silence. That night, Amora couldn't sleep. She lay awake, listening to the wind, feeling as though the walls of her room were closing in. Her heart ached with both love and dread. She clung to the memory of the man who once made her laugh, the man who once promised her the world. She wanted to believe he was still there, hidden beneath whatever darkness was overtaking him. The next morning, Ngozi came again, this time with tears in her eyes. She begged Amora to leave him, to come and stay with her family for a while. But Amora shook her head. She was too deep in it now, too tied to Chike. Love had become a chain she didn't know how to break. Later that week, Chike took her on a walk. They went far from town, to a path few people used. The silence around them was thick, broken only by the crunch of dry leaves under their feet. Amora felt his hand tighten around hers, and she forced a smile, though every step made her more uneasy. When they reached an open space, he stopped and turned to her, his face unreadable. "Do you love me?" he asked. His voice was steady, almost too calm. Amora nodded quickly, her throat dry. "You know I do." He leaned closer, searching her eyes as if digging for something hidden deep inside. "Then prove it." Her heart raced. How? He smiled faintly, a smile that didn't reach his eyes. You'll see soon. The words sent a chill down her spine. She wanted to ask more, but fear locked her tongue. She followed him back to town, but her mind replayed that moment over and over, each repetition heavier than the last. From that day, everything shifted. Chike became more demanding, more controlling. He watched her every move, questioned every smile she gave anyone else. The sweet boy who once brought her roasted corn had been replaced by a man whose love felt like a cage. And yet, she stayed. Because deep down, she still remembered his laughter, his warmth, the way he once held her as though she was the most precious thing in the world. She clung to those memories like a drowning person clings to driftwood, not realizing that the sea was rising higher around her. But the town was watching too. Whispers grew louder. Old women shook their heads when she passed, muttering prayers under their breath. Children were told not to wander near Chike. Something dark was coming, they could feel it. Amora herself felt it too, though she buried it under hope. She told herself things would get better, that maybe he was only going through a phase. But deep in her bones, she knew the truth, this love was heading toward something she could neither control nor escape. The storm that had been building was close now. She could feel it in the way his eyes lingered too long, in the way his hand sometimes trembled when he held her, in the way he asked again and again if she trusted him with her life. And one night, when the air was thick and still, when silence clung to the town like a warning, Amora would finally discover what those questions truly meant. The night that marked the beginning of the unraveling was strangely quiet. Even the crickets, which normally filled the air with their songs, seemed to hush. Amora sat by her window, the glow of a lantern beside her, her fingers fidgeting with the edge of her wrapper. She couldn't shake the unease that had been building inside her. It was like standing at the edge of a cliff, knowing one wrong step could change everything forever. Chike had been distant for the past 2 days. No sweet words, no playful laughter. Just silence and a stare that made Amora's heart pound in ways she couldn't understand. That evening, he arrived at her door without knocking. His clothes were neat, his smile too polished, but his eyes, they carried a storm that no smile could hide. "Let's go for a walk," he said simply. His voice was soft, almost too soft. Amora hesitated, but she nodded. Love had taught her to obey, to trust, to believe. She picked up her shawl and followed him into the night. They walked through narrow paths, past quiet houses where lamps flickered faintly, and toward the edge of town. Amora's footsteps were unsteady, but she didn't dare pull away. Chike's hand was firm around hers, his silence heavier than any words. "Where are we going?" she finally asked, her voice breaking the silence. He turned to her, smiling faintly. "To a place where we can be alone. Don't you like it when it's just us?" She forced a smile and nodded, though her chest tightened. The farther they went, the fewer houses they passed. Soon, only trees and the sound of the wind surrounded them. They reached a clearing, a place Amora had never seen before. The moonlight spilled across the ground, silver and eerie. Chike stopped, turned to her, and held both her hands. "Amora," he said, his tone strangely tender, "do you believe love can last forever?" Her lips trembled. "Yes, I do." His eyes glistened, but not with warmth. "Then show me. Prove to me you love me more than anything, more than anyone." Her heart pounded. "How do you want me to prove it?" Chike leaned closer, his breath brushing her face. "By trusting me completely. No questions, no fear. Just trust." Amora swallowed hard, nodding, though unease coiled inside her like a snake. She wanted to run, but her legs felt heavy, rooted to the ground. He pulled her close, holding her so tightly that it almost hurt. His whispers were strange, filled with promises and threats woven together. He spoke of a life where no one could separate them, a bond that even death couldn't break. Amora listened, her body tense, her mind screaming for clarity. When he finally let her go, his eyes lingered on her neck, his gaze sharp and unsettling. She shivered, stepping back slightly, but he caught her hand before she could move farther. "Why are you pulling away?" he asked, his tone calm but laced with danger. "I'm not," she whispered quickly. I'm cold." His grip softened, and he smiled again, that same smile that never reached his eyes. "Then let me keep you warm." They sat together under the moonlight, but Amora could not relax. Every sound made her jump, the rustle of leaves, the distant howl of a dog, the shifting wind. She wished to be back in her room, safe under her mother's roof, but she didn't know how to say it. Hours passed before he finally stood and led her back. The walk felt endless, every step heavy with silence. When they reached her house, he kissed her forehead and whispered, "Remember, your love belongs to me alone. Always." Amora lay awake that night, replaying every word, every look. The way his eyes had lingered on her neck haunted her. She touched her throat, trembling, as though she had narrowly escaped something she couldn't name. The next morning, Ngozi stormed into her house. Her face was pale, her voice trembling with urgency. "Amora, you need to leave him. Last night, I heard things. People say he's dangerous. They say he's planning something." Amora shook her head, tears filling her eyes. "Ngozi, I can't. I love him. I can't just walk away." "Love?" Ngozi cried, grabbing her hands. "Love doesn't trap you like this. Love doesn't make you afraid to sleep. You're blind, Amora. Can't you see it? He'll destroy you." Amora's tears fell freely now. She wanted to believe her friend, but her heart clung to Chaik. She remembered the boy who once brought her flowers, who laughed with her by the riverside. How could she throw all of that away? She convinced herself that if she held on just a little longer, he would change. But Chaik was changing in ways she couldn't control. His visits grew more intense. He no longer knocked when he arrived, he simply walked in. He went through her belongings, asked her about every person she spoke to, demanded she stop seeing certain friends. His love was no longer sweet, it was heavy, suffocating. One evening, as the sun dipped low, Amora's mother noticed the sadness in her daughter's eyes. She pulled her close and whispered, "Child, love is not supposed to break you. If it hurts this much, it is not love." Amora wanted to listen, but the chain of Chaik's presence was too strong. He had wrapped himself around her life so tightly that she couldn't see a way out. That week, whispers in the town grew louder. Someone claimed they saw Chaik at the edge of the forest, digging. Another swore he was speaking to himself in the dark, words that sounded like chants. Amora didn't know what to believe, but fear began to seep into her dreams. Then came the night that shifted everything. Chaik arrived with a strange calmness, holding her hands as if the world belonged to them. He told her he wanted to take her somewhere special, somewhere no one could disturb them. Amora's heart raced, but she followed. She always followed. The path was dark, lit only by the pale light of the moon. Chaik's grip was strong, his silence terrifying. Amora felt as though she was walking into a place she would never return from. And when they reached the clearing again, she realized she had been right. His eyes glowed with something she had never seen before, something wild, something dangerous. "Tonight," he whispered, "our love becomes eternal." Amora froze, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst. The night air pressed heavy around her, and for the first time, she wondered if she would ever see the light of morning again. The night carried a silence that felt like a trap. Amora stood in the clearing with Chaik's hand gripping hers, her pulse racing so loudly she could hear it echo in her ears. His words, "Tonight our love becomes eternal," hung in the air like smoke she could not breathe through. She tried to smile, tried to hide the panic clawing at her chest, but her lips shook. Chike's eyes never left her face. He looked at her as though searching for something buried deep within her soul. "Amora," he said softly, "I have given you my heart. Now I need yours in return. Do you understand?" Her voice wavered. "You already have my heart." He tilted his head, his smile sharp and unsettling. "No, not like that. I want more. I want to make sure nothing and no one can take you away from me. People in this town, they envy us. They whisper lies. They want to break what we have. But I won't let them." Amora's throat tightened. She wanted to ask what he meant, but she was afraid of the answer. His hands were trembling slightly, though his grip on hers was unrelenting. He guided her to sit on the ground with him. The moonlight poured over them, making the shadows longer, darker. He spoke in low tones, weaving words about destiny and fate, about how some loves were chosen by spirits long before two people were born. His voice was calm, but his eyes betrayed a storm. Amora listened, shivering. Each sentence sounded more like a warning than a vow. She wanted to run, but her legs refused to move. Instead, she sat still, nodding, pretending to understand. At one point, Chike reached into his pocket and pulled out a small knife. Its blade glimmered under the moon. Amora's breath caught, her body stiffening. "Don't be afraid," he whispered, brushing the flat of the knife against his palm. "This is how we seal our love. A mark on me, a mark on you. No one will ever break us apart." Her heart thundered. She wanted to scream, but the night was too still, too heavy. She forced a smile. "Chike, please, there are other ways to show love." His face darkened, and his voice turned sharp. "You think I'm a fool? You don't trust me?" Tears welled in her eyes. "I do trust you." "Then prove it," he snapped, thrusting the knife closer to her hand. "Just a small cut. That's all." Her fingers trembled as he pressed the handle into her palm. For a moment, she thought about using it against him, but the thought vanished as quickly as it came. He was too close, too strong, and his eyes were wild. She feared that any wrong move would push him into something worse. With shaking hands, she barely scratched her skin, enough for a drop of blood to appear. Chike's eyes widened with satisfaction. He quickly cut his own palm deeper, letting his blood drip onto the ground. Then he pressed his bleeding hand against hers, forcing their wounds together. "Our bond is sealed," he murmured, his tone frighteningly calm. "Now, even death cannot separate us." Amora bit back a sob, her body trembling under his grip. She wanted to pull away, but he held her hand tight until her skin ached. Only after several minutes did he finally release her, his face glowing with a strange joy. That night, when he walked her back home, Amora couldn't look him in the eye. She wanted to tell her mother, to scream to the world about what had happened, but fear sealed her lips. She knew if she spoke, he would find out. And if he found out, she might not live to see another day. The next morning, her mother noticed the cut on her hand. "What happened?" she asked, worry lacing her voice. Amora quickly hid it. "Just a small accident in the kitchen." Her mother didn't believe her. She stared into her daughter's eyes, seeing the fear she couldn't voice. But before she could press further, Chike appeared at their door with his usual smile. Amora's mother stepped aside reluctantly, though her eyes followed him with suspicion. Inside, Chike acted as though nothing strange had happened the night before. He laughed, teased Amora, and even helped her mother fetch water. To everyone else, he was the perfect gentleman. But Amora knew better. She knew what those calm eyes could hide. Days turned into weeks, and Chike's obsession grew. He visited her every day, sometimes several times. If she wasn't home, he waited. If she tried to walk to the market alone, he followed. He began cutting her off from her friends, from anyone who could pull her away from him. Ngozi noticed the change in her friend more than anyone else. One evening, she cornered Amora behind the church. "Your face tells a story you won't say out loud. He's breaking you. You have to leave." Amora's lips trembled. "If I leave, he'll find me." "Ngozi, you don't understand," he said, "we're bound forever." Ngozi grabbed her shoulders. "That's not love. That's a curse. You need to fight it before it's too late." But Amora didn't know how to fight. Chike's presence had become like air, suffocating but inescapable. The night that followed was darker than usual. Chike appeared at her door with a strange look in his eyes, a look that chilled her to her bones. He said he wanted to take her to the clearing again. Amora hesitated, but his voice left no room for refusal. This time, the clearing felt different. The wind was stronger, the trees whispered as though warning her. Chike held the knife again, running his fingers along its blade. "You and I," he whispered, "we will be remembered. Our love will live in stories. But for that to happen, something must be given." Amora's heart nearly stopped. "What do you mean?" His smile stretched wide, his eyes gleaming. "Every eternal love requires a sacrifice." Her knees weakened, her throat dry. She wanted to run, but his hand clamped around her arm like iron. For the first time, she truly understood the danger she was in. Chike wasn't speaking of love anymore. He was speaking of possession. He was speaking of death. And as the moonlight fell across his face, Amora realized she was standing on the edge of something far darker than she ever imagined. The wind that night carried a weight Amora could not explain. The tree swayed, the leaves rustled, but to her it sounded like whispers, warnings from the unseen. She stood in the clearing with Chike's hand gripping her arm, his knife glimmering faintly under the pale moon. His words echoed in her chest, "Every eternal love requires a sacrifice," and her blood ran cold. "Chike," she whispered, her voice breaking. "What are you saying? What sacrifice?" He smiled, the kind of smile that unsettled rather than comforted. "You ask too many questions. If you love me, you won't ask. You will simply give. Love is not about holding back. Love is about surrender." Amora's throat tightened. She wanted to cry, to scream for help, but the clearing was far from town, and the night was too deep. Only the trees bore witness. Chike traced the blade of the knife across his palm again, reopening the wound he had sealed days before. The blood shimmered in the moonlight. "This is my proof. I have given my blood. Now I need yours, all of it, every drop." Her heart slammed against her chest. She shook her head, her body trembling. "Chike, no, that's not love. Love is kindness, it's patience, it's care. This isn't love. It's madness." For the first time, his smile faltered. His jaw clenched, his eyes darkened. "Madness?" His voice was low, dangerous. "You dare call what we share madness? You don't understand, Amora. You're mine. If I cannot have you in this world, I will have you in the next. Either way, you will not leave me." Tears streamed down her face. She begged softly, trying not to anger him further. "Chike, I am here, I am with you. You don't need to prove anything. Please, let's go home." But he shook his head, his grip tightening on her wrist. "Home? You think home can save you? No, Amora. Tonight, we create a bond that even death cannot undo." Her legs weakened, and for the first time she fell to her knees, pleading. "Please, I beg you. Don't do this." For a moment, silence hung heavy. Chike stared at her, his breathing ragged, his body tense. Then he knelt in front of her, cupping her face with hands that shook. His eyes softened for a fleeting second. "Don't make me hurt you," he whispered. "Just trust me, and everything will be beautiful." Amora sobbed quietly, trapped between the man she once loved and the monster he was becoming. She searched his face for the boy who used to bring her roasted corn, the boy who laughed with her under the warm sun. But all she found was obsession, sharp and consuming. The clearing grew colder, the air heavier. Chike leaned close, his voice low and steady. "Say it, Amora. Say you will give me everything." Her lips trembled. She could not say it, yet she could not refuse. Fear knotted her tongue. When she stayed silent, his expression hardened. His hand moved to the back of her neck, firm and unrelenting. "You leave me no choice," he said softly, almost tenderly, as though the cruelty of his words could be softened by his tone. Panic exploded in Amora's chest. She struggled, pulling against his grip, but his strength overpowered her. The knife gleamed between them. She tried to scream, but his hand pressed harder, choking her cry. For a split second, she thought of her mother's words, "Love is not supposed to break you." She thought of Ngoz's warnings, of the whispers in town, of all the signs she had ignored. And in that moment, she realized she might not live to see the morning. Her body shook violently, her mind racing. She clawed at his arms, kicked at the ground, but Chike held firm. His breath was hot against her face, his eyes wild with a strange devotion. "You'll thank me," he whispered. "In the next life, you'll understand." The knife moved closer, its blade catching the moonlight. Amora's tears blurred her vision, but she could see enough, the steel, the determination in his eyes, the madness consuming him. Her heart screamed for escape. She pushed with all her strength, breaking free for only a moment. She stumbled backward, gasping for air, her eyes darting for a path out of the clearing. But Chike was faster. He lunged, grabbing her arm again, pulling her close. "You cannot run from destiny," he hissed. Her voice broke into sobs. "Please, Chike, please, I love you. Don't do this." For the briefest second, her words seemed to reach him. His grip loosened, his face flickered with doubt. But just as quickly, the darkness returned. He shook his head slowly. "Love demands everything, Amora. And tonight, I take it all." The clearing grew still, as though the world itself was holding its breath. Amora's body went cold, her spirit trembling. She knew this night would not end like the others. And when Chike raised the knife higher, his eyes fixed on her with a terrifying calmness, Amora realized the love she had clung to was gone. What stood before her was not love, it was destruction, and it was coming for her. The night swallowed every sound except for Amora's ragged breathing and the thundering of her heart. The clearing that once seemed wide open now felt like a cage, its shadows pressing close. Chike stood above her, knife glinting in his hand, his chest rising and falling with a strange rhythm, too calm for what he was about to do. Amora fell back onto the ground, her palms scraping against stones and roots. She lifted her trembling hands, begging, "Chike, please, I am yours. Haven't I always been? I've given you everything. Isn't that enough?" His eyes softened briefly, but the madness inside him burned brighter. "No, Amora. Words are not enough. Promises are not enough. Blood is the only thing that lasts." He crouched in front of her, his face inches away, his breath hot against her cheek. "You're afraid now, but you'll see. When we are joined in death, no one will dare tear us apart. We will be eternal." Amora shook her head violently, tears streaming down her face. She tried to scramble backward, but he caught her ankle, dragging her across the dirt. The sharp edge of a root tore her wrapper, cutting into her skin. She cried out, kicking, clawing at the earth, but his grip was unyielding. For a moment, Chike simply stared at her, his chest heaving, his eyes wild. He looked almost possessed, as though he was no longer entirely himself. His voice lowered to a whisper, trembling with intensity. "Why are you fighting me, Amora? Isn't this what you wanted? To love me forever?" Her voice cracked, desperate. "I wanted to love you while alive. Not like this. Not in fear. Chike, this isn't love, it's death." Her words pierced him like a blade sharper than the one in his hand. He froze, his mouth tightening, his breath unsteady. His face twisted, torn between rage and sorrow. For a fleeting instant, Amora thought he might drop the knife, that he might realize the monster he was becoming. But then his expression hardened, the darkness returning in full. His hand shot forward, gripping her by the hair, forcing her face upward toward the knife. "You don't get to choose, Amora. You are mine. You were born for me, and if I can't have you in this world, I'll claim you in the next." Her scream tore into the night, carried into the trees, into the silence of the sleeping town far away. She thrashed, her nails digging into his arm, her body twisting with every ounce of strength she had left. The knife pressed close, cold against her skin, its bite only a breath away. Her mind raced with images, her mother's gentle smile, Ngozi's warnings, the laughter of children in the streets, the taste of roasted corn on a sunny afternoon. Life. Sweet, fragile life. She wanted it. She wasn't ready to let it go. Summoning all her strength, she kicked hard, her heel slamming into his knee. Chike grunted in pain, stumbling slightly. The knife slipped from his grip, landing a few feet away. Amora didn't waste the moment. She scrambled to her feet, her body trembling, and ran. Her bare feet slapped against the earth, every step tearing her skin, every breath burning her lungs. Branches scratched her arms as she tore through the trees, but she didn't stop. Behind her, Chike's furious voice echoed. "You can't run from me. You are mine, Amora. Mine." His footsteps crashed through the brush, closing in. Panic fueled her legs, but exhaustion dragged at her body. She prayed silently, her lips trembling, begging for strength, begging for a miracle. The path grew darker, twisting. She stumbled, nearly falling, but caught herself against a tree. She wanted to scream for help, but she knew the town was too far to hear. Her only chance was to keep moving, to find somewhere, anywhere to hide. She darted into a thicket, crouching low, her breath shallow. She pressed a hand over her mouth to quiet her sobs, her heart beating so loud she feared it would give her away. Chike's footsteps slowed. His voice grew softer, chilling. "Amora, why are you hiding? Come back. Don't make this harder. I only want us to be together." He moved closer, his silhouette passing between the trees. He held the knife again, its blade catching streaks of moonlight. His eyes scanned the darkness, wild and searching. Amora's body shook, her muscles screaming in pain, but she stayed still, every nerve straining to remain silent. She could smell the iron tang of blood still fresh on his hands, could feel the weight of his madness pressing closer. Then, without warning, his head snapped in her direction. His smile stretched, chilling in its calmness. "I can hear you breathing." Amora's heart dropped. She bolted from the thicket, sprinting again, her feet pounding the earth. Chike roared behind her, the sound of a man no longer in love, but in a frenzy. The chase tore through the night. Amora's body ached, her lungs screamed, but fear gave her strength. She didn't look back, she couldn't. Every sound, every rustle was death chasing her. Finally, she stumbled into an open path, the moonlight spilling across it. Her legs buckled, and she fell hard, scraping her knees. She tried to rise, but Chike was already upon her, his shadow looming. He stood above her, knife raised, his voice a whisper that carried more terror than a scream. "You should not have run, Amora. Now, it ends." She stared up at him, her tears glistening, her lips trembling in prayer. She knew she could not outrun him anymore. She knew the night was about to swallow her whole. And as the knife descended, Amora's final thought was of her mother's face, her smile, and the life she would never see again. The night that began with fear ended with screams swallowed by silence. The clearing, the trees, even the wind seemed to witness but say nothing. Amora lay trembling beneath Chike's shadow, the blade glinting as it came down. Her cry tore into the air, but there was no one to hear it. No one but him. Chike's grip was strong, his breath unsteady. The knife slashed, swift, merciless. Amora's body jerked, her eyes wide with shock and betrayal. The warmth of her life spilled too quickly, soaking the earth beneath her. Her tears mixed with the soil as her voice faltered into a weak whisper. Why? Chike, why? For the first time, his eyes softened, but not with love, only with obsession fulfilled. He knelt beside her, stroking her hair, whispering words she could no longer respond to. Because you are mine. Now, forever, and beyond. No one can take you away from me. The forest went eerily quiet. Amora's last breath escaped into the night, her body limp in his arms. Chike pressed his face against hers, inhaling as though to trap her soul inside him. Then he did the unthinkable, he raised the knife once more and cut. The steel flashed, and with trembling hands, he severed her head. Blood stained his clothes, his hands, the earth itself. He cradled her lifeless head in his arms as though it were a fragile treasure, pressing his lips against her forehead with a twisted tenderness. Now, he whispered, we can never be apart. His footsteps echoed as he carried her head through the forest, leaving her body behind. His silhouette disappeared into the shadows, swallowed by the night. The trees, the earth, the very air seemed to mourn, but they could not stop him. By dawn, the town awoke to a horror no one was prepared for. Farmers on their way to the field stumbled upon Amora's body lying in the clearing, pale, still, incomplete. Her wrapper was torn, her hands cold, her blood dried into the soil. The air carried the stench of death, heavy and unforgiving. Cries erupted. The women screamed, the men froze in shock. Word spread like wildfire. Within minutes, the entire town gathered, staring in disbelief, grief, and rage. Amora's mother collapsed at the sight of her child, wailing, clutching the earth as though she could pull her daughter back from it. Ngozi screamed until her voice broke, her eyes swollen with tears, her heart burning with guilt for not saving her friend. The elders stood in silence, their faces dark with sorrow. This was not done by an enemy, one said gravely. This was done by someone she loved. Someone she trusted. The town moved quickly. Men with machetes and lanterns spread into the forest, searching. Their voices rang out, calling Chike's name with fury. But Chike was gone. He had vanished into the world beyond their reach, carrying with him the piece of Amora that completed his madness. Days passed, and grief hung over the town like a curse. Mothers held their daughters tighter, fathers warned their children never to walk alone. Amora's mother refused to eat, her cries haunting the nights. Ngozi sat by her friend's grave, whispering apologies, blaming herself for every warning ignored. But Chike's shadow lingered. People whispered of sightings, strange figures moving at night, a man carrying something wrapped in cloth. Children spoke of hearing a voice in the forest calling Amora's name. Some claimed they saw him by the river, crouched low, speaking to a severed head as if it were alive. The town was never the same again. Amora's story spread beyond their borders, retold in whispers, in fireside tales, in warnings to young women. Do not be blinded by love, the elders said. Love is sweet, but when it turns dark, it consumes. Chike became a ghost story, a name parents used to frighten their children into obedience. But for those who knew Amora, it was no story. It was truth carved into their hearts with grief. And yet, somewhere in the shadows, Chike wandered, his mind gone, his arms still clutching the proof of his obsession. To him, Amora had never left. She was still with him, forever his, bound not by love but by madness. In the end, the town remembered her not for how she died, but for who she was, the girl with laughter bright enough to warm any heart, the girl who believed too deeply in love, the girl whose kindness deserved the world but met tragedy instead. Her grave became a place of flowers and prayers. Mothers took their daughters there, telling them, "This is why you must choose carefully. This is why love must be tested, not blindly followed." Amora's story lived on, heavy and unforgettable. Her name was etched into memory, her fate a lesson carved in sorrow. And though Chike vanished, the terror he left behind never faded. Some nights, when the moonlight cut sharp across the earth and the wind whispered through the trees, people swore they could hear Amora's voice, soft and aching, calling for peace. And in the same breath, others swore they heard Chike's voice too, whispering from the darkness. "You are mine, Amora. Forever mine." This tale is more than a story, it's a warning, a memory, a voice that will not be forgotten. If this shook you, make sure to subscribe so you never miss a story that stirs your soul. Tell us in the comments the country you're watching from and what time it is where you are right now. We want to hear your story too.